Here's Charlie Kirk to make some bad arguments for God's existence.
Hey, Charlie. I've been watching your videos for a long time. Been a big fan of yours. One thing I will say is that I have come out here not only because I turned conservative in about 2016 with Trump's first run. I've always also been a devout atheist.
What's a devout atheist? Does this guy always carry out all of the atheist rituals and consistently go to atheist church?
And I've been proud in my beliefs with that. I find the book, the Bible, to be a very fictitious book. I find that it has a lot of contradictions that are not squared away by anybody that finds it, that reads it. So I'm just want to know one thing I want to get for you before we dive into that is how can we get more people of different faiths to come to the conservative movement instead of, because a lot of what I see of you is espousing on Christian virtues and to a lesser extent Jewish, but I think that there could be a lot more that we could do with ideas rather than the beliefs of religion.
Let's start with the idea of atheism, if that's okay.
Sure.
I'm going to go through all of the arguments for God's existence.
Okay.
All of them?
I want you to tell me if you've heard them before or if they are compelling.
Okay.
First is what's called the ontological argument for God, which ontos comes from the Greek. It's the Greek word for being.
Sure.
So the highest conception of human beings, we can only conceptualize that which is real.
Really? We can't conceptualize fictional things? Charlie's not doing a very good job of explaining the ontological argument. It doesn't say that we can only conceptualize things that are real. By the highest conception, I guess Charlie means the greatest conceivable being. That's how the argument usually expresses this concept. The argument assumes that a being which you conceive of as existing is greater than a being you conceive of as not existing. This seems pretty subjective to me, but even if you concede that existence is in some sense greater than non-existence, to define God as the greatest conceivable being, and therefore a being which exists, simply ties the concept of God to the concept of existence. This can never prove existence, because to prove that something exists, you have to prove that it's more than just a concept, which you can't do by using nothing but concepts. Also, when I think of the greatest being of which I can conceive, I don't think of a being whose existence is independent of space and time, as God is often described as being, because I don't understand what it would mean for something to exist independent of space and time. That seems like a contradiction to me, therefore I cannot conceive of it. Also, the greatest being of which I can conceive could not be both omnibenevolent and omnipotent, as God is often described as being, because those are contradictory attributes. An omnibenevolent God would be one that could never conceivably do anything bad, but an omnipotent being would be one which can do bad things. So when I think of the greatest being of which I can conceive, that being doesn't resemble the typical descriptions of God at all.
And so the highest conception of our own, combined wisdom is God. I think this is the weakest argument for God, to be perfectly honest.
Right, and I'll agree with you there, yeah.
Yeah.
You're also doing a really poor job of expressing it.
But it is a proof that on an ontological view of God. The second of which is called the cosmological view of God, coming from the Greek word cosmos, which means all-encompassing creation.
Sure.
If you look around with creation, there are 15 fine-tuned measurements that if anyone went off by a micron, our entire existence would not exist.
Ironically, this is only necessarily the case if there is no God. The typical expression of the fine-tuning argument is that if the universe were even slightly different, the development of life would be impossible. However, if an all-powerful God exists, then he could put life into a universe with any set of parameters. Therefore, it wouldn't be true that life would be impossible in a universe with different parameters. In fact, if we lived in a universe that had parameters that made the natural development of life impossible, that would be far greater evidence that we are not a merely natural phenomenon.
The tilt of the Earth, our proximity to the sun, our configuration of oxygen to carbon dioxide. In fact, we can look at the probability of our existence. It's 1 in multiple trillions.
Charlie's not even using the strongest form of the argument. He's only citing the conditions of the Earth. Even if the odds of this planet having the conditions it has is 1 in multiple trillions, there are multiple trillions of galaxies with multiple billions of planets each, just in the portion of the universe we can observe, so that easily overcomes those odds. A stronger version of the argument focuses on the parameters of the universe as a whole, which would make life as we know it impossible if they were different by much more minute amounts. The problem with that argument, though, is that we have no reason to believe that those parameters were ever free to vary. Just because we can imagine them being different, that doesn't mean they ever could have been different.
that all of this would come together at an exact time, let alone consciousness, let alone human beings, let alone our DNA.
Why are those so improbable?
Sure, I want to counter that with the fact that there are millions upon millions of galaxies with millions upon millions of their own stars, with millions and millions of their own planets. If we didn't, I don't think that if this Earth was not in this exact space as it exists now, I think that is also not compelling, because we would have found existence on in another location in the universe if it was not just in this space.
I don't have enough faith to believe that.
You estimated the odds of the planet having the conditions it has to be 1 in multiple trillions. Given that there are at least multiple sextillions of planets in the universe, if the odds of this planet's conditions are just 1 in multiple trillions, then there should be about 1 billion planets just like this one. Believing that just takes math, not faith.
But let me continue onwards. Then there is what's called the teleological argument for God. That comes from the Greek word telos, which means, we get the word telescope. It means goal, destination, or purpose. This here goes to an argument that for every cause, for every effect, there must be a cause.
That's true by definition. The issue is, how do you know the universe is an effect?
So, for example, we can agree that space, time, and matter exists. We agree.
Yes.
Therefore, definitionally, something that is outside of space, time, and matter must have made space, time, and matter exist.
That would only follow if we took it as a given that space, time, and matter were an effect. We have no reason to take that as a given. The mere fact that they exist doesn't mean they are an effect, because then everything which exists would be an effect, and theists clearly don't believe this to be the case. Because if God exists, that would mean he is an effect too, which is a conclusion they find theologically unacceptable. Also, what would it even mean for something to exist outside of space, time, and matter? What does it mean to say that something occupies reality at all if it exists nowhere and never?
Not necessarily. We can.
Well, then it's against the laws of reason.
Not because there could always be a universe that existed before our Big Bang. It's not. We could have existed with space, but no matter in a very tiny point. That's what basically the Big Bang was. So I don't see how that disproves atheism. And it's more. Atheism is more of a, I don't believe God exists. Why is this compelling?
Well, I'm going to go through two more proofs of God, and then we'll finish. Then there's what's called the Kalam proof of time.
The Kalam proof of time? Charlie's not very good at this.
Which is, thanks to Albert Einstein, we know that time is actually a real thing that can be traversed with enough speed. And in order for time to exist, something timeless must have created it.
That doesn't make any sense. You can't create something at a time when it already exists, and obviously there was never a time when time didn't already exist. This is true even if time had a beginning, because there would still be no such thing as before the beginning of time. And to say that something can exist independent of time is to say that it can exist while never existing. That's a contradiction.
Finally, there's something called the axiological view of God. I don't know if you know this one. Axios comes from the word, the Greek word judgment. Axios and judgment mean the same thing, which basically means that every human being has some form of right and wrong embedded in us.
I'm not sure that's true, but even if it is, why can't that be a product of evolution? Why would that need a god?
For example, when the Nuremberg trials were happening, the Nazis were not able to say, well, it was just the laws of the land. They actually appealed to a higher power, saying that every one of us had some good or evil within us.
But the convictions were still ultimately based on human-made laws.
Okay, so that doesn't. I mean, that kind of disproves, right? I mean, if the Nazis were able to point to something outside of themselves and say, hey, this is the reason why we're doing this.
They didn't. No, the point is the Nazis didn't. Is that the people doing the trial did, meaning the Nazis were not able to excuse that.
Okay.
Again, they were convicted of crimes against humanity, which were legislated into the Nuremberg Charter by human beings, not by God.
So out of all those proofs of God, what, if any of them, are persuasive to you?
None.
None. Okay. So then if you look at a human being and you look at the improbability of our, how we are put together, do you believe that we are largely an accident of multi-billions of years of evolution?
No, not an accident. Rather, we're an inevitable consequence. As improbable as our evolution may be, there are enough planets in the observable universe alone to overcome some pretty huge improbabilities.
Yes. How do we know? How do we not know that how do we know that there isn't something that's identical to us on another, planet somewhere that we haven't encountered yet? It's just a skeptic in me that's thinking that way. That says, hey, maybe there's something out there that we haven't contacted yet that is in another galaxy or another planet or something that We just don't know about.
Or maybe there isn't.
But why would it be more probable that there isn't?
Okay.
So the improbability, though, of our existence and the Earth and oxygen and carbon and nitrogen and all of it together, you don't marvel at a human being being able to heal itself when it's cut or grow to a...
No, because we're not the only beings on Earth that can do that. There's a lot of people.
Well, we are the only ones that can reason, though.
That depends on what you mean by reason. We're definitely not the only animals that can make inductive inferences. Whenever my cat sees me walk into the kitchen, he expects me to feed him because he's seen me do that multiple times before and inductively infers that I will do it again.
Okay.
Do you marvel at our capacity to reason? At even the ability for mammals or reptiles to reproduce life? You don't see any intelligent design behind it?
None.
I think Charlie is one of those folks who assumes that order and complexity can only come from intelligence.
You just see it as
it's a consequence of natural selection and evolution over millions and probably millions of years.
So we both have faith.
Okay.
I would argue you have a lot more faith than I do.
Given that his views are inferred from evidence, I don't see how that constitutes faith at all, let alone more faith than it takes to believe in an incoherently timeless and spaceless God.
You have a lot more blind faith to believe that everything around you, love, joy, peace, sadness, is all just a construct of neurons firing in your brain.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Given that these are thoughts and feelings are events, something has to be carrying out these events. If it's not the brain carrying them out, what is it?
So do you believe that we are just limited to our five senses?
No, I think even science has said that there could be like a sixth sense of...
What is that sixth sense?
Proprioception. People often forget about that one.
Like a sixth sense that can be aware of what's surrounding the body. That, like, I can know that there's another person next to me, or there's a microphone in front of me. I can sense that. I don't need to have my eyes... Oh, I could be blind and I could still know that was there. I mean, I didn't need... I use more than five senses. Science has told us that for decades, that we have more.
What do you think happens when you die?
Nothing.
What do you think happens to a song when you stop singing it? Does it go to song heaven?
Our electronic impulses just stop firing and
Let me ask you the most important question.
Okay.
Do you hope you're wrong?
The reason I don't believe in a god or an afterlife is because I don't know what those things even are. They seem incoherent to me. I can't hope I'm wrong because I don't understand what it would mean for me to be wrong.
Not really. No, I mean, I've got this.
You don't desire an afterlife.
Well, if the afterlife is just kowtowing to God for eternity, I don't see what there is to desire about it. To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.